us now, our next speaker, Irizarry. Aaron is the head of servicing platforms design at Capital One, as well as the co-author of a book discussing design, improving communication and collaboration through critique. So that's 2 books you can now add to your lists. He's going to talk a bit about his journey growing his own leadership skills and generally how design leaders can continue to lead well as our approaches and technologies and the world continues to change.
Hey everyone, I'm Aaron Irizarry, head of servicing platform design at Capital One. And today I'm going to talk a bit about what it means to be a successful leader. And my take on that is that it starts with us and how we learn to lead ourselves in order to lead our teams better. To capture that, I want to visit this quote from Simon Sinek, that leadership is not about being in charge, but is about taking care of those in your charge. And why I like this quote in this context is if I cannot think about how I lead myself or I take care of myself as a leader, then I don't know that I'm setting myself up to successfully lead my team in a way that supports them the best way that I could. So I'm going to dive into a few areas about that. First being assessing and improving our emotional quotient. And that starts with self-awareness. Really just the ability to recognize and understand our moods, our emotions and drives, as well as how they affect others. As leaders, people are constantly looking at us and watching us, whether we like it or not. And so if I can understand what's maybe a trigger in a meeting or what something's bringing up for me when I'm interacting with others, I can then be more self-aware about how I present myself, how I show up for my team, and what I model as a leader. So that is a really key skill to develop. Next, that is self-regulation, right? We've all been in meetings where we feel frustrated, something is challenging, or we get triggered by something, and that's fair because that's human. But at the same time, if we can learn to self-regulate that, we can capture those emotions, we can capture those responses, think about them for a moment, process them, suspend judgment or frustration, revisit with a bit more context, and then engage. And this models a way of engagement for our teams when they face challenging, disruptive, or frustrating situations. The other is intent, right? And I love this way of thinking about it. It's the ability to pursue goals with energy and persistence. Intent is so key in our work because it really drives everything we do. It's our why. And so when we show up in meetings or when we're engaging or having a discussion on one-on-one with one of our direct reports, what's our intention? We need to be mindful, or I'll use myself, I need to be mindful about the outcomes that I want to see in that engagement. And so if I can learn to really understand and be mindful to think about and choose what my intent is in each interaction or in each situation, I can be more proactive in driving the right kind of outcomes. And that then sets me up to be a model for my direct reports and explain to them this same value of being intentional with our time, with our conversations, and with our interactions with our teams and our partners. And empathy, the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people. I know in design, gosh, this is one of those terms that constantly gets a bit overused and kind of deflates the value in it. But in reality, it is still very valuable, right? And the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people, skilled and treat people according to their emotional reactions. This really is seeing people. I find myself saying this to my teams and my partners. We talk so much about empathy for our users or our customers or whoever we're building products for. But if we're not having empathy within the organizations we work, I don't really believe that we can have that much empathy for people we don't even know in our customers. It has to start. The empathy we build with our product partners, our engineering partners, and with our teams, that's what's going to lead to true empathy for the products in showing up in the products that we build for our customers. So empathy is super key. This is one of those things where I believe that the design skills that we use with like research and strategy to deliver our work are so key as we bring those into our interpersonal relationships in the workplace. And empathy is one of those. And social skills, right? Now, I want to be very clear here that this is not about being extroverted. This is more about understanding the people we're working with, right? Managing relationships and building networks, the ability to find a common ground. This is, again, where I think I put my research hat on, and I'm thinking, if I take the time to, in the same way I would building a product, to understand who I'm building for, to ensure that I'm delivering something that meets their needs, if I could take the time to understand and build relationships with the people I work with and the teams I lead, I can understand how they work. I understand what they respond to. I understand what type of communication style lands with them, what kind of things might trigger them or be frustrating to them. This is really about understanding my audience, even to the point of sometimes taking how I would frame conversations around design and maybe not saying it so much design speak, but going to them and speaking their language. and taking the ideas and the concepts I have and putting it in a way that they understand, formatting it in a way that they talk, in a way that they present or put together decks. So this social skills is not so much about being like, hey, I'm the happy-go-lucky guy in the office, or it's not about extrovert, introvert. This is about knowing your audience and understanding people and developing a way to communicate with them that's effective. When I think about these in this emotional quotient, right, what we're really doing when we build this in ourselves, this builds an effectiveness in leading change. This builds the ability to be persuasive in our conversations with our partners, because people see us being intentional. They see us being thoughtful in our actions, being considerate, and making sure that we're not just out there driving our work as much as that we are actually taking time to ensure that the relationships we build with the people around us are effective. And how does this relate to leadership within our teams and being an effective leader? This is the type of behavior, this is the type of interaction model that we want to model to our teams. And more so, I'd even say, thinking about this in the relationship with partners, but think about this with our teams. One leadership style doesn't match every direct report. There's a really good chance that we're going to have to take a different approach with different people that we lead in our teams. That's where the social skills, and that's where the empathy and understanding and being able to be self-aware and self-regulate in how we interact with them. They all show up, they're humans, as different individuals. And so we need to think about how we can lead them in a way that's going to set them up for success and enable them to do their best work. And to do that, we need to be very aware of how they work, what makes them tick, and how we can work with them in a way that they feel supported and that they feel seen in their work. Another way we can start to do this is by leading with vulnerability and transparency, right? I do want to make a bit of a difference here. I think when it comes to vulnerability and transparency, transparent is just letting people, being honest, right? It's being real, it's being open. Vulnerability is an exchange. It's kind of a currency. So we have to be very careful about that, because there's only I'm not vulnerable just for the sake of being vulnerable. I'm vulnerable with someone to build trust. And I want to make sure that when I am vulnerable, it's not transactional. It's not as transactional as like overly transactional. I want someone to see that my effort to be vulnerable in front of someone is that I'm investing in a relationship with them. So I'm giving them something, but I'm not using it in a form of manipulation. And I just want to qualify that as we go through this section. When we're not transparent, we erode trust, and we can encourage assumption-driven thinking with our teams. Our teams are looking to us. They're humans, just like you and I are. And when we see an email or hear an announcement from the organization or have a conversation in a meeting, we can respond to things. And if we don't have the context needed in those moments, the best we can do is make assumptions about what's happening. And so it's really key that we are transparent with our teams, that we share with them the information and the reason behind decisions being made, so that they can rally around them, even if they're decisions or things that happen that they might not necessarily agree with, right? We don't want them to be in a position to have to fill in blanks, because I don't know about you, when I'm in that position, I end up going to the worst case scenario more times than not. And so we really want to build trust by being transparent with our teams. I will say here, we want to be transparent in a way that doesn't cause anxiety, but gives the right information that they need to do their job, which means that we need to show our teams that we trust them enough to share fears, concerns, and setbacks with them. Now, I am not a fan of the fail fast mentality, because personally for me, my mental model around failure is an end state. Now, mistakes, bumps, trips, falls, hey, we get up, we learn, and we carry on. And I'm all for that. I'm about taking educated risks. I'm about trying things and learning from them. But failure is not something that I really believe that I don't like the fail fast. Maybe it's just the language around it. But what I want to do with my team is show them that it's okay to say, hey, I'm really nervous this might not work. Or, hey, you know what? Oh, things are a little crazy right now. I don't know about you all, but the last year and a half has been full of moments to be transparent with our teams about how we're feeling, and giving them the space to do that as well. Especially as so many of us are working remote, we're bringing work into our team members' homes now. They don't go to an office, we're bringing work into their living spaces. And so it's important for us to be able to create space that we can share some of the things we're concerned about, or, hey, you know what? Guess what, team? That didn't land well. That didn't work. What should we do here, right? And so that creates space for them to feel like they can be open and honest and do the same. The last thing I want to create for my team is a space where they feel like they're walking on eggshells and they don't want to share the things that are worrying them, or they're so worried about failing and the results of that, or not failing, but like missing on a project or under delivering or whatever the context may be, that they just kind of get frozen in that moment and really can't dive into their work with their whole selves. And communicating like with candor, right? And I want to be clear here that like candor is not licensed to be an asshole. Like we hear radical candor all the time. That doesn't mean that you can just be like harsh and rude to people. That's just kind of like radical stupidity, if you ask me. That's just not thinking through something. That's taking something out of context and giving yourself license to be something that's not productive. So when I talk about candor, that is being able to have a tough conversation, but in a kind and effective way. And when we can do that, we encourage collaboration, right? And that's what builds trust. When I can be honest with someone in a productive and kind way, that lands and builds trust with them, which means collaboration is easier because when trust is there, it's easy to put ourselves out there. It's easy for someone to share an idea without the worry of being criticized or ridiculed or shut down. And so it's really key that we communicate with our teams and we approach things in a candid and collaborative way. I kind of talked about how we would see our people, and they're all different. And so we need to think about our leadership style. We also need to do that with our communication style as well. So when I think about this in the context, right, I want to make sure that I make an effort to recognize how the way I communicate impacts others. So for me, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little all over the place sometimes. So I kind of, I can be sarcastic or I'm making jokes in meetings. I just show up as myself, which is good. And I want people to see me that way, but I also need to understand that how I communicate might impact someone. Someone who's a little less forward or introverted may not really jive. My openness and kind of just who I am might rub them the wrong way. So it's not that I'm changing myself to be something different for everyone, but I'm just mindful of how they operate and how they communicate. And when I can model that to my team, I think that helps them understand that they can do the same, and that will help them be effective in their partnerships. It's also important to take the time to consider how different perspectives, situations, and contexts affect understanding and perception. I don't know about you, but sometimes, especially as I've moved up in my role as a leader, I'm in more and more meetings, right? The meetings are starting to become the work because we're talking about the work that our teams are delivering and we're designing how they design and what we're building. And so I can show up in a meeting and someone may just seem like they're just checked out or not listening. And I need to recognize that they may have just come from a really difficult meeting and they're bringing a level of frustration from a couple meetings into this existing meeting. Sometimes it's a really great idea to take the first few minutes of a meeting to give everyone a minute to pause, write down what's bugging them, what's in the back of their mind, and just kind of clear space so they can be present in that current meeting. And doing this shows people that you really want to have productive interactions with them. And this is a fantastic thing to model to our teams. And be intentional for planning the situations where ambiguity is present, or confusion is possible. Think about going into a meeting or a conversation or a working session, what information might be missing, or just identify that with the team so everyone can be comfortable that that's there and can work through it together. And take note of communication styles, right? Like I said this earlier, learn to communicate on people's terms. I really feel like this is so key in our work because all of us come from different backgrounds. And, think about it, we want to celebrate diversity so much in our work. We want to be increase belonging and inclusivity. A way to do that and to demonstrate that outside of just saying it is to show people you see them in their communication style and meet them where they are. To me, that brings inclusion and that brings belonging. That's one way amongst many that we can do that. Another thing we should be thinking about is leading through autonomy and enablement, right? First and foremost, model an autonomous working style. Just work, right? Get your things done. Just if you don't know, go test it out, figure it out. That's one way we can show our teams it's okay to take the lead and do things. Again, this is so simple. When I say it, it sounds so simple, but the things we want our teams to do and the way we hope that they work and show up are easier for them to do when they see us model it before them in the way we work. Another thing to do is just get out of the effing way. Sometimes I know as I moved through levels of management, we went from a maker to a manager and a leader, it got hard sometimes. I still wanted to meddle. I still wanted to be in the weeds a little bit. It's a good idea for us to balance direction with autonomy and say, hey, this is where we're heading. But within this space here, that's where you put your fingerprints all over everything. Go for it, right? And get out of the way and let our teams do that. And what I mean by getting out of the way, it doesn't mean that I ghost my team as much as I'm I'm behind them, supporting them. I'm alongside of them with my pom-poms as a cheerleader, and I'm out in front of them clearing hurdles. That is getting out of the way. And build an understanding of our team's experience, skills, and challenges, right? If we know our teams and we know what their skills are, we know what challenges that they may have in their work, we can learn how to individually enable our teams as individuals as well as a whole. And we can be thinking as opportunities come up and new challenges arise, oh, this would be great for that person. That's a great stretch role for them. Or, hey, you know what? People are asking for this person to do that body work. That might not align with their skill set. So we might need to think about how we change the structure of the team a bit. Again, build that understanding, put your research hat on, gain the insights, invest in understanding the makeup of your team. And of course, we should also create a vision statement that our teams can use as a North Star and hold ourselves and them accountable to it. This helps us at all times make autonomous decisions, because if we all know what we're striving for, they can make decisions in meetings without having to come ask me permission first. They can make decisions, see how it plays out, and come back and tell me what they learned. And that's what I want for my teams. And then check in with our teams on a regular basis. I try to, informally on a regular basis, like informally just through conversation, but hey, on a quarterly basis, how's our process working? How's our structure working? How are our rituals? Is this working for everybody? Do you feel supported? Am I still showing up for you in a way? Is there something else I can be doing? This is a constant for us. This really helps your teams also feel seen, because it shows them that you're mindful in creating an environment where they can be successful. This one, I will say this part, and most of this presentation I will tell you is really a case study in my growing up as a leader, and based on a lot of the mistakes I've made. So you're welcome. Hopefully my mistakes are giving you a level of information and things that will help you think about how to be more successful and find interesting ways. And you can't take some of this stuff and apply it one-to-one with your teams. And maybe this is sparking thought for you and hopefully helping you generate ideas for how you can invest in yourself as a leader and the way you want to show up to better support your teams. And so when I go into these personal norms, these are very specific to me, and I don't expect that they apply to everybody as a one-to-one. So please just think of that in this context. First and foremost, our vibe sets a tone for the space in which our teams work. If I'm constantly showing up irritable, stressed, exhausted, down, frustrated, which are all states that are okay to be because we're human. But if I continue to bring that into my interactions in the workplace, man, it's going to put our teams on edge. They're not going to feel comfortable. And they may even start to adapt those things as well, just kind of through how we're showing up, osmosis kind of thing. So it's really important that we think about how we want to show up at work. And that's the challenge of being a leader. There's days where I don't want to show up. I'm not ready. I am not in a good space. We face personal challenges within our families, within our relationships, within the world around us. And it's hard to not bring that into the workspace. So what I do when I'm having those days is I let my team know, hey, y'all, I'm going to let you know I'm not feeling it much today, but I'm here. I'll get through it. Let's get after it, right? So they can see that if I'm showing up in a certain way, there's a reason behind that. Here's the challenge too as a leader, right? Man, I have the new Google Calendar feature, shows you has these insights about how much time you spend in meetings. I try to not even look at that because it can be scary for me at times. But I need to be mindful to manage time so that I can be present for my teams. So a rule I have, or I try to keep to as much as possible, is that I don't, if there's meeting conflicts, I will reschedule other meetings, but I try as much as possible never to reschedule one-on-ones with my team members, because that it reminds me that they need to be my priority, and it shows them that they're a priority to me. Also, it's so hard, right? This is the cobbler's kids don't have shoes, or whatever that crazy saying is. I don't even know if anybody calls anything a cobbler anymore. It's like a shoemaker, or a sneakerhead doesn't even get the best Nikes or something. I don't know. Anyhow, invest in your own personal development. And what I mean by all that, mumbling right there was hey, look, I'm so busy investing in my team, I don't invest in myself sometimes. And that's really key for me to make sure that I'm investing in my own personal development, because that is going to show my team, one, that it's okay for them to take time to do that. But if I'm not growing myself, how can I be continually growing in my team, right? I've got to build myself and grow myself so that I can more effectively grow my team. Establish healthy norms, right? Healthy routines. This is key. For a long time, I was not healthy. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was out late. I was not having healthy eating and drinking routines, and it was showing up in my work. It was showing up at home and showing up at my work. It was not good. So I had to really think about what I was doing. And the second I chose to establish more healthy routines for myself, and there's ones that I do personally for me and for you, those are whatever you think they may be. I'm not trying to push anything on anyone. But what I am saying is once I chose to do that for myself, I found myself more present for my team and just more clear-minded and focused and able to process and support them. Again, this isn't to be prescriptive and to tell you how to live your life, but find a space, whatever that space may be, where you can talk. For me, a lot of it has been getting a personal coach where I can talk through the things I'm going through. I can have them, I can discuss, and they can follow a line of questioning and help me think through and come to the right conclusions for the things I'm finding as a challenge. Because so often being a people leader can feel like being a therapist. And so we're managing our team's problems in work, and we're managing partner relationships, and we're managing our own lives. And it feels like we're constantly solving problems on other people's behalf, and we're not taking time to think about the things that are challenging for us. So I would encourage you, whether you actually get a therapist or not, find space for yourself to process and unpack the things that are happening around you so that you can have clarity of mind and focus for yourself personally, which then translates to more for your team. I know I've shared a lot with you, and I've shared it relatively quickly. But my hope for you is that even if you don't do all the things I've mentioned today, is that you start thinking about how to invest in yourself as one of the ways that you can invest in your teams. And I know it's challenging, and the world's a little bit of a mess lately, right? It feels like every time we turn around, something else crazy is happening. But here's what I want to let you know. I've got you. This community of people in this event and our broader design community has got you. But more importantly, you've got this. You've survived 100% of the challenges the last couple of years have thrown at you, and you can continue to do that. So thank you for the time. I would love to hear from you at Aaron I on Twitter. Please reach out to me if you want to discuss any of these things more. And thank you so much for your time.
Hey, Aaron, that was awesome. So many good points in there.
Thank you. I realized I should have wore the same shirt.
Just because I did doesn't mean you need to. So awesome. I think there's so many good points in there, and it's unfortunate that what stood out to me is something that I'm going to keep saying is a sneakerhead doesn't even get the best Nikes. That took out to me. I'm like, that's my new phrase that I'm going to say.
Because I thought I totally fumbled that part. So at least there was some good that came out of that.
Yeah, no, I love that. But we do have some questions here that I would love to get to. So I'm going to fire a couple your way if that works.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a question here. How explicit are you with understanding your direct reports or partners? Do you go as far as personality tests or similar evaluations?
Yeah, I've done some. A lot of it I try to just do in one-on-ones. Even the team I lead now, I took over in February, and so one of the first things I did is I sat my new leads down and just said, like, hey, this is me. This is my leadership style. This is kind of how I approach the work and think. I'd love to hear about each of you. And started it more informal, but we have done as a team collectively different things like that to see, sometimes for fun to see, but just to understand a little bit more about each other. There's a lot of different tests out there. And I think it's a great opportunity to learn more about people, but we don't really bring some of those results directly into the work to be like, well, hey, this is because I remember you had this result on this test, so you're only going to work on these things. I think it's just great insights to help me be more mindful of my approach with them and with my partners. My partners have asked me to do some of the various tests, and I always do it with them, just because it's a way to engage and show them that if that's important to them, then I'm happy to go along. And but a lot of times I'll just ask, like, does this resonate with you? Does this make sense? Hey, in that last meeting, we approached this conversation this way. Is that how you like to approach those? And so sometimes it's just really conversational for me. And over time, it's just kind of, I'll take a lot of notes too. I have notes on my team, on individuals. I haven't gone so far as to make them each like a baseball or a Pokemon card yet, but you never know. Maybe I'll do that for an end of year gift and everybody will get some, but they can collect them and trade them. But I think it's just any way you can gain insights is really good. And also to know the boundaries. Some people are going to be reserved. They may not let you in as much. So it's a little bit of a tricky dance to know when to push for more information, but when to also give space.
Totally. Yeah. And sometimes, to your point, doing those exercises together it's almost the benefit of the exercise, not the output of the exercise. It's trust building just by doing it and sharing with each other within itself. So that's super important. Another question here. I know this is, of course, dependent on the person, but how might we encourage our own leaders to adopt some of these practices as we try this ourselves? Can we model this behavior up to leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I do with like my directs, one of them asked for feedback for me more recently. And so I shared something that I had recently learned and was something I was hoping that we could kind of take as an approach as our team. And the thought around it was this idea of approaching problem solving with curiosity. So me in particular, I can tend to, when I see things going a little bit sideways or coming off the rails, I can get frustrated pretty easily. And so my note to myself is to approach problem solving with curiosity by slowing myself down, looking at what the cause of the frustration is, what's the outcome I want, and then how can I get creative in approaching that to get to the outcome. And so I'll share something like that and say, this is what I'm doing in this situation. I'm not sure if it works for you, but I offer it to you as something that you can try to do. And I will do that with my either my peers or even managing up with either my manager or other senior leaders within the organization. I often present things as this is how I'm thinking about this or doing it, and maybe it fits in the situation or works for you, maybe not, but I just wanted to offer it because it's been helpful. And I think in a lot of this stuff, especially when it comes to partners and other leaders, it's all in the framing of saying like, hey, I found this to be helpful. I want to offer it to you, as opposed to like, hey, I think you should do that way. So the framing can often help make for an easy deliver, more acceptance from the other individual.
Totally. Yeah. Context is so important for sure. Another question here. You mentioned modeling can be so important in setting an example for your team. You also mentioned how meetings can become the work when you reach a certain level. How do you balance those two realities of wanting to model in a certain way, but also having some limitations in the time you can, spend demonstrating things to your team, I guess?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Like I said, like I'm in lots of meetings, especially as we get close to the end of the year. We've got performance management, we've got next year planning and what's wrapping up in this year and retros, and there's a lot going on. And so I just try to be mindful to look for opportunity. What can I do to find opportunities to either have a conversation or, and you know what, sometimes I'll be completely honest, like there are times when one of my team members just comes and said, hey, I really like how you handle that, and I'm adopting that for myself. I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no idea that they saw something I said or did in a meeting resonated or landed with them, because I wasn't doing it so that they would intentionally see that I did one specific thing. I was just trying to do my best to show up the right way. And sometimes it is just that, like when we just carry ourselves as we are, different people will see different things you model and then take it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. Well, really appreciate you being here, Aaron, and talking about your journey and being vulnerable with us. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. The event sounds just been awesome, and I'm excited to hear about all the stuff on Twitter is going on from all the great work you've all put into this. Thank you so much for the support.